Hey guys, how's it going? John Brown here, and I'm going to be telling you guys how to get your PlayStation 4 controller set up to use in Unity in this video. So if you're looking to use your PlayStation 4 controller for testing purposes, follow this video. Cool, let's go. Okay, so there's essentially four very simple steps to get your PS4 controller working with Unity. Step one just involves connecting your PS4 controller to your PC via USB. If you're on a PC, it should just be plug and play compatible, so your computer will automatically download the drivers for the controller and you'll be able to start working from it right away. Step two is obviously open Unity. Step three, we're going to add the input axes inside the input manager, so Unity knows what buttons we're looking for and what like button presses and axes we're looking for. And step four, I put hack a character controller, but it's not really hacking. I'll show you what it is. It's just so you can get up and running and having a character moving around and everything. And we're just going to be changing some code inside of the first person character controller that Unity provides for us. So let's go ahead and get started. This should be a pretty simple process. Okay guys, just a little demonstration of what we're going to be making by the end of this video, or what you should have. This is me using the PS4 controller to move my character around. As you can see, I made a little debug script on the left side just to see everything going down. So I got the vertical looking up and down, got the horizontal looking left and right, got vertical moving forward and back, left and right. On my R, buttons are working. As you can see, the R3, L3 are buttons, and the R1 and L1 are buttons, but the L2 and R2 I have as axes, so I can see the pressure. I'm pressing down on them. Got the face buttons working, got the D-pad working, horizontal and verticals, those are axes. Got the share button, options button, touchpad, and PSN button working. So let's go ahead and make that. So first thing you want to do is, just if you want to be able to move around and stuff, go ahead and make a little scene. I just have a terrain here. I just threw on some texture, threw a texture on it. I put some boxes just for reference so I can see my character moving around. Then you want to go ahead and add in, just get rid of this guy. Go ahead and add in a first person controller. If you didn't import the asset when you opened Unity, just in case you don't know, just go to Assets, Import Package, Character Controller, and then inside your project folder you should have under Standard Assets, Character Controllers, a first person controller. Go ahead and drag that into your scene. If you play right after you add that, and this assumes that you have already set up your PS4 controller just by plug and play, you will be able to move your character and you will be able to jump with one of the buttons. That's just because those are they're just already mapped to the left analog stick on the PS4 is mapped to the horizontal and vertical axes in the Unity system. So like I said, the third step after we open Unity is just we want to add these input axes to the Unity input manager. So what we want to do is go to Edit, go to Project Settings, and go to Input. Now I have 33 axes. If you're doing this for the first time, you're going to have 15. So the first thing you want to do is change this to 33. It'll say after this first jump, there's going to be another jump, and then all the rest are going to also be jumps. We're going to change those names. As you can see, I just I have a naming convention that corresponds to the buttons. So I have X, O, triangle, square, options, share button. I have the D-pad horizontal because it's an axis. I'll get to that later. And D-pad vertical. I have the R buttons, R1, 2, and 3. I have the L buttons, L1, 2, and 3. I have the right analog stick. I have the touch button and the PSN button. You notice I don't have the left analog stick because, like I said, that already corresponds to the horizontal and vertical axes that are within the Unity system, so you don't need to worry about those. You can name these whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. The only thing that is important is that for buttons, that the positive button is for the value you have it as what it is corresponding to the PS4 controller. So how you figure this out is, I figured it out just through a series of testing. Most controllers, if you plug them in, they're usually going to be named something like joystick button with a number. Same thing is true with the Xbox controller. So I just plugged in my PS4 controller, did a lot of testing, and I found out what all the buttons and all the axes were. And I've made a little image for you guys, which I'll put in the video later. But this is pretty much how the PS4 controller lines up in Unity. So we have the face buttons here, which square being joystick button 0, starting at 0, and then going counterclockwise, with X being joystick button 1, O being joystick button 3, and then triangle being, or L being joystick button 2, and then triangle being joystick button 3. Then it kind of just goes left and back and forth for some reason, but we have the L2 or the L1 button being joystick button 4, with the R1 button being joystick button 5. We have L2 and R2 buttons. They are both buttons. They do correspond to button presses, but they're also axes. And essentially what axes are is a number between like -1 and +1, and it gets the pressure of what you're pressing. So I use axes for these two, but you can also use the buttons. I guess that would come in handy if you had something in your game where if the user presses the L2 button all the way down, then something happens. But what I have, I'll show you some code later that I can essentially just find what the axes is at, and I can do some code for that, but I'll show you that later. So these are axes. Then we just pretty much have more. So 8 is the options button, or the share button, sorry, with 9 being the options button. 10, the 10 is our L3. I should have put L3 here. I need to do that. 11 is R3, and these also correspond to the axes. Like I said, this is already horizontal and vertical, so you don't even need to put this in your system. You do need to put the joystick button 10 as L3 though. And then we have the right analog stick corresponding to the third axis in the horizontal direction, and the 6 axes in the vertical direction. And then we have, joystick button 12 is the PSN button. 13 is the touchpad button because it does click. And then you would think that the D-pad would be buttons, but they're actually axes themselves. So they correspond to the 8th axis in the up and down direction, with up being a positive number and down being a negative number. So if you press up, it's going to be +1. If you press down, it's going to be -1. And then 7th axis is the left and right, with left being -1 and right being +1. So I'm gonna put this. I'll put this later in the video, and you can check it out. And I'll probably put a link to it or something in the description. But this was just from my testing. I tested the controller, and I found out that all these buttons and all these names, like I said, there's usually something generic like joystick button something, and then these axes just correspond to whatever Unity has in their system. So what you want to do is, for all these buttons, just go ahead and line them up. So I know that the X button is, from my testing, it's joystick button 1. So I go ahead and inside the positive button, I put joystick button 1. O is joystick button 2, and so on and so forth. So then we get to these things like axes, like the D-pad, like I said. So you don't need to put a D-pad up or D-pad right, D-pad down, D-pad left, because it's an axis. So it's going to be like a positive or negative number. So essentially what I have is gravity 0, dead 0, 1, 0. You see I don't have anything for the positive button name, don't have anything there. But what I do have is, as you can see the difference, for something like a button, you can just keep the type as key or mouse button. You can keep the axis as x-axis, and you can keep the joy number to get motion from all joysticks. For a axis type input, you want to change the type to joystick axis, and then you want to correspond it to whatever number I gave you in the description. So this is for the D-pad horizontal, so we can go back to our picture and see that the horizontal is the 7th axis, left and right. So we don't need to have a D-pad left and a D-pad right button. We just have D-pad horizontal, and we correspond that to the 7th axis. So then in game, if we press left, it'll go to a negative number, and then in right, it'll go to a positive number. And that corresponds to your sensitivity. I have mine at 1, and so it'll make it -1 or +1. So in code, I can say, if get axes for this name, if it's -1, then do something according to if the player presses left or something, whatever. So just make these all what you want their button to be. So I'll just loop through these so you can see it. So X is joystick button 1, O is joystick button 2, triangle is joystick button 3, square is joystick button 0. Options is joystick button 9. These aren't in order. You can put these in any order you want. Share is joystick button 8. Deep horizontal is the 7th axis, and make sure to put it in joystick axis. Vertical is the 8th axis, and make sure to put it at joystick axis. R1 is joystick button 5. R2 is R2 is an axis as well, so it's the 5th axis, as you can see by the picture. R2 is 5th axis, L2 is 4th axis. So R3 is a button, so that's joystick button 11. L1, joystick button 4. L2 is an axis, 4th axis, joystick axis. Okay. L3 is joystick button 10. Sorry, this is going a little long too. Sorry. Right analog horizontal is, just the left and right for the right analog stick, so it's an axis. And so, yeah, for the axes in this case, you want to put like your dead at 0.01. I found that this is pretty good. Putting it at 0.01. I don't think I changed gravity, and I put sensitivity at 0.1. This pretty much ensures that if I'm not pressing, if I'm not even touching the analog stick, it'll be the value will be 0, and then if I start slowly tilting it to the left, it'll increment by like a 0.1 value, because that's the sensitivity on it. And I can re-show you the debug and let you see that. Anyway, vertical, same stuff, except it's the 6 axis. Touch buttons, just a button 13, and then PSN button is button 12. So yeah, I'll go ahead and show you that one more time in the debug. As you can see, for right analog and left right analog, horizontal and vertical, I have 0. If I start to slowly tilt it left, I get a negative value all the way to almost 0.1. And then if I do it right, I get a value almost to 0.1. And then same for vertical. And then also the same for my L2. As you can see, this goes from -1 to +1 when I press it all the way down. And then R2 is the same. Okay. So that was the first step. We just needed to add in all those inputs and assign them to, values, so we just put them in positive button, and we just named it whatever the PS4 equivalent is. So now that we have all that, how do we get our first person controller, or how do we get it to move? I'm just going to use the first person controller because it's already something Unity has set up, but you can make your own movement script if you want and put it on a character, whatever you want to do. So essentially what I did is I just looked at the first person controller, and I looked at the components, the major scripts that make it move, and I found out what the important one was. Essentially was the mouse look script. This is the script that allows the player not only to look around with the camera, and it also rotates the capsule. Yeah, but then that's what it does. And then the horizontal and vertical is what move it. But that's already set up in Unity, so we don't even need to mess with that. So the main script you need to look at is mouse look. So I'll go ahead and open that. And what I did is I just edited this script and saved it as my own prefab that I can use for later. So I saved it as this right here, PS4 FPS controls.cs. So essentially, as you can see, as I'm switching between these two, I didn't really change much, as you can see. So this is the main script. That's it. It's just 64 lines. It's pretty simple stuff. So the main lines I changed was starting from the top was the sensitivity. I found out that trying to move around with the stick, it was pretty slow. So I changed the sensitivity up to 30. 30 floats on both the X and Y sensitivity. That's just the speed at which you look around, so that was nothing major. Next line I changed was I didn't really mess with the mouse X and Y, just because on the first person controller neither thing is using it. As you can see, the mouse look script is on the first person controller and the main camera. As you can see, mouse look script. Essentially, it takes an enum value, so the mouse look script on the first person controller is using the mouse X position, and okay, cool. And the mouse look script on the main camera is using the Y mouse. So I didn't even worry about messing with this line right here because it's an enum value. We have mouse X, we have mouse Y. And essentially, it's looking for the axis. And it says if the axis is mouse X and mouse Y, then do this code. If it's just X, do this code. Otherwise, if it's Y, do this code. And since the character controller only uses X and Y, that's the only thing I had to edit. So essentially, the main line I edited was the only line that was in here, and I just changed the axis to right and whatever I had as the right analog. So PS4 right analog, and as you can see in here, it says mouse X. I just changed it to my right analog stick. Simple, right? And then inside the mouse Y, I just changed the mouse Y to Y vertical, and that's pretty much it. I said I changed this line, did I? I don't think I edited that line. Oh, yes. So when you play, you'll see that if you press up on your right analog, you'll actually look down, and if you press down, you look up, because the controls are inverted for whatever reason. I think it has something to do with like the coordinate system. So the last edit I made is just to take out this negative, because it's in the original. It's negative already, so I just took it out, and that'll make you look around fine. So I made all those edits. I saved it as a new script called PS4 FPS controls. Then I just essentially renamed this first-person controller to PS4 first-person controller and put it inside of my own prefabs folder. So I didn't even have to edit the original prefab, just in case I don't want to use it anymore. So then I pretty much deleted the mouse look script from my prefab. I deleted it and put in my script, the PS4 FPS controls. I put the axis to the mouse X on the controller, and on the main camera I put it to mouse Y. And then as you can see, change the sensitivity values. Actually I have it on 40 on here. Okay, so cool. And then after that you should be good to go. So you have your own prefab, you have your own script, and you try to play it, and you will be able to look around with your right analog stick, and you'll be able to move around. So just go ahead and play with the values there, get it to where you like the sensitivity and you like how fast you're moving around and everything, and you'll be good to go. Yeah, I think that's about it for that. Let me see. Oh yeah, jump is also already set up. Well, there's two jumps. This jump is for space. This jump is for, I actually put that as joystick button 1, yeah. So actually, X. Okay, so I actually have two values for joystick button 1 because Unity automatically pulls in the value jump to make the character jump. I just changed the jump to joystick button. Actually, I think it already corresponds to something. I think this originally was joystick button 3 or so, because I think it was my triangle button. Yeah. So if you want to be able to jump with like the X button, just go inside of jump and change it to, whatever button you want it to correspond to. So I just changed it to joystick button 1, so it'd be the X button. So after that, you'll be able to move around and everything. So that's pretty much the end of the video. If you want to stop watching now, if you want to look at my debug script I wrote a script called like test axes, just so I could see all the values over here. So essentially what I did was I just made a GUI text by just going to GUI text inside create, just called it debug GUI, and then on my player prefab I created something called test axes. It's a script. It pulls in the GUI text component from the debug GUI, so we can go look at that script. And essentially this is all I have. This is the main thing you see. I just have the text and I just have all the values. So this is how I did most of my testing for it. So I say like, PS4 R1, and give me whatever get the input for the R1 button. So essentially, since it's a button, it's going to be false when it's not pressed and true when it is pressed. False, true, false, true, you know. And if you want to get those values, you have to use get button because that's a button. For something else like an axis, you use input.getAxis, and then use the string of whatever you called it in the input manager. So I have PS4 R2, and as you can see, I put that right here, PS4 R2, and that corresponds to the same thing. So since it's an axis, it's not a true or false value, it's a numeric value. And as I push down on the button, you can see it going all the way up to 0.1, and all the way back to negative 0.1. So that's cool. So I just essentially did something like that to debug all my values, and just use a new line at the end just to space them out, make it look a little nice. Nothing fancy, just have all the buttons, and so I can see, you know, everything that's going on. So if I was pressing the X button and then a triangle was going down, I could say, okay, well, there's probably something wrong in my input manager. So that's about it. Then up here in the input and the update, I was just doing something to test for the axes, like I said. So I say if get the axes of L2, and like I said, it's a numeric value between -1 and +1. So I say if it's greater than 0, which means it's more than halfway pressed down, just a tad bit more, then I just set, you know, a boolean to true, otherwise it's false. And then I said if it's true, and I went inside of a script that Unity wrote called character motor, and I got the forward speed inside of movement, and I just changed it to 4. I lessened it to 4, and then otherwise, if I'm not pressing the button, I changed it to 8. I did this to essentially simulate, you know, aiming down the sight of a weapon. So as you can see, oops, you can't see. I'll do maximize on play. I'll click this guy, and as you can see right here, look at the check L2. I'm not pressing L2. I'm pressing it. You see, I'm pressing it. It's not past 0, not past 0, not past 0, not past 0. Now it is. You can see check L2 goes to positive or goes to true. I let it go. It's false. And essentially, and then you look up here, my max forward speed. It's 8. Now it's 4. Now it's 8. Now it's 4. So essentially, if my character had a gun and I was, you know, moving, and then I saw an enemy and I was like, oh snap, you know, I need to aim down so I can kill this dude. I do that and my character slows down moving. So I can, you know, you can slow down your character and stuff like that. So that's just something I was testing. But anyway, this video's gone on way too long. I do apologize for that. I hope I helped you guys. So like I said, the main things you just need to do is obviously get your PS4 connected, or your PS4 controller connected, open up Unity, create like a test scene or something like that, pull in the first person character controller, or just make your own. You don't really need to do that. This is an optional step. But pretty much just add these input axes and make sure they're pointing to the right thing, to the right naming convention. So joystick button, a number, or, you know, pointing towards the right axes. If you have that all set up, then you should be good to go. You can hack, you know, you can change a little code in the first-person controller that Unity gives you, and you'll be walking around already with your PS4 controller. Otherwise, you can make your own script and, you know, have fun with that. So I'm going to try to make a little something cool with what I got here, and we'll see, you know, where that goes. But I hope you found this video educational. Sorry it was so long, like I said. It'd probably be like a, I mean, if you already know the steps, you probably didn't need to watch the entire video. So, you know, I try to make this as thorough as possible for people who don't really understand the input manager or anything like that. I know I had some trouble with it at first, so hopefully I didn't get too basic for any of you guys, and hopefully everybody could enjoy it. So, yeah, thanks for watching, and go make some games with the PS4 controller. Goodbye. Oh my gosh.